So, if you're a fellow Bernie Sanders supporter like myself, it's this time of year again. I mean, I guess it happens all year long, but whenever the polls come out, like we just had a YouGov poll that came out, we have to go tell our establishment friends that yes, voters actually like Bernie Sanders. And in many cases, voters like Bernie Sanders more than they do whatever establishment candidate that they have out there. Now, they always want to do the frightening of Bernie would scare away moderate voters, this, that, and the other. Then we have to show them data that proves that that's not the case. I mean, I'm sure all of you have shown your Hillary supporters or your Biden supporters or whoever, like Bernie actually dominating Donald Trump in 2016, whereas Hillary Clinton was hardly beaten Donald Trump, right? The data is there, but they go off of feelings, vibes, right? And joy, whereas a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters like myself go off of facts. So a new YouGov poll that was done February 2nd to the 4th, so just ended yesterday, of 1,604 US adult citizens was conducted. And of course, Bernie Sanders is above water when it comes to his favorability rating and actually has the highest favorability rating of any of the Democrats that they actually poll in this sample. So let's go ahead and look at Bernie Sanders' favorability rating and show kind of where the establishment is constantly wrong when it comes to Bernie Sanders. All right, so here we go. As you can see, amongst the total respondents in this poll, 46% said that they have a favorable opinion of Bernie Sanders, with only 39% saying unfavorable and 15% saying that they do not know. So we have Bernie Sanders already above water by 7% amongst all respondents. So that just already blows what they say out of the water right away, that people don't like Bernie Sanders. Okay. Here we see that they like him, and they usually are always positive numbers for Bernie. Now, if we look at male voters, Bernie's actually winning by 1%, something that we don't see with any Democrat, usually nationwide. He's actually up when it comes to favorability rating amongst male respondents in this, 45 to 44. And then when it comes to female respondents, he's up 34 to 47. Okay. A huge gap there. Now, a lot of the people who were the Hillary bots in 2016 wanted to use this Bernie bro thing as some sort of insult, I guess, to make their identity politics, make them feel good about their identity politics. But one of the things that I noticed as someone who volunteered with the Sanders campaign was that there were a lot of young females that were part of the staff, right? What the Hillary Clinton's campaign was saying and what the reality wasn't there. Again, data bore that out. Data bears it out right now. Now, if we look at white voters, yes, Bernie Sanders is down, but by only 2%. So that is pretty good considering most Democrats are significantly down with white voters. With black respondents in this poll, Bernie Sanders has 62% to 16%, which is not far off from what we see with Kamala Harris and others. So this whole idea of black voters don't like Bernie, again, the data is saying otherwise. Now, when it comes to Hispanic voters, he is up by 18% amongst the Hispanic respondents, 30% to 48%. Now, the Democrats have been doing really poorly with Hispanic voters over the last few cycles. And in the most recent polls, we see the Democrats doing absolutely horrible. Bernie Sanders, he rectifies that problem according to the respondents in this poll. Now, if we look at age, we see throughout the ages, they're pretty much all the same, and income levels are all the same as well. Now, when it comes to Harris voters, there's 12% of Harris voters who have an unfavorable opinion of Bernie Sanders. And again, those are probably the Hillary bots that keep on, the Claire McCaskells and all that, who keep on pushing the narrative that Bernie can't win without any evidence. But then if we look at Trump voters, 17% of Trump voters have a favorable opinion of Bernie Sanders. Now we're starting to get near 20%. That's a pretty significant number. Now, if we look at registered voters, instead of just looking at the overall population, we see that it gets a little bit closer, 48% favorable to 44% unfavorable, but that is still 4% above water. And now Bernie Sanders is getting close to a majority of people having a favorable opinion of him. Remember, this is with 8% of the people saying that they don't know, they don't have an opinion. So if you took out those people who probably won't be voting anyway, you do have Bernie Sanders in a majority. Now, one of the arguments that the establishment Democrats always make when it comes to Bernie Sanders is that he's going to lose the moderate vote. He is too radical to win the moderate vote, so therefore we can't do that. Now, of course, having Donald Trump being the radical on the right for the last 3 elections didn't seem to really hurt them. So their argument is, again, just fluff and with no data or anything to back it. But we have the data here. And as we can see here, 51%, a majority of moderates have a favorable opinion of Bernie Sanders, a majority compared to 36% who have an unfavorable rating. And 14% of those moderates say they have no opinion whatsoever. So, I mean, imagine if you just split, if you take that 14% out, or you just split it between favorable and unfavorable, now Bernie Sanders is in the 57, 58% range here. Okay, so the whole idea with these moderate centrist Democrats constantly saying that Bernie Sanders cannot win moderate votes, again, we still have time after time after time, and again, you probably do it, more proof that Bernie Sanders would do quite well, probably with moderate voters. Now, if we look at party ID, now remember, Bernie Sanders is an independent. You can see that 80% of Democrats have a favorable opinion, 73% of Republicans have an unfavorable opinion, but 73%, but 17% have a favorable opinion. Now, when it comes to independents, this is something we're going to talk about in a future video. If we look at independents, you can see there's 26% who say they don't know. And what we're seeing in a lot of polls, especially in the last 2 to 4 years, you're seeing a lot more people say they don't know, that they're undecided, which is making me start to wonder about these samples. Now, they're almost always from those who identify as independent and sometimes as moderates as well. But this 26% number for I don't know is pretty high compared to all the numbers we're seeing in the other ones. Now, once we put the independents with the leaners, saying when we ask those independents, are you leaning more Democrat or leaning more Republican, you do get some independents. So no, I'm just an independent. Now, all of a sudden, you got 40% of people not knowing who Bernie is. But still, the point here is that Bernie is up 10% when it comes to independents. All right, so this whole argument that the establishment Democrats make about Bernie Sanders is just absolutely false. It's just not an argument that really holds water. Now, if we go to Elizabeth Warren, she is above water as well. Really important, but by 2%. And if we look again, now she's got a more liberal stance. She's not as well known as Bernie Sanders, but you can see 40% to 29% as far as moderate voters. They like where she is. Harris voters like her as well, but you got 13% of Trump voters, not like the Bernie numbers, but 13% saying that they actually do like her. The only thing is with independent voters, 38% don't know who she is, and they have an unfavorable rating for her. Whereas once you get those people to say, do you favor the Democrats or Republicans more? You can see the people who don't know who Elizabeth Warren is goes up to 53%. Again, this is a problem. And the reason why I made the stupid voter video previously was just because if these people, if this 53% is actually voting and they don't know what they're voting on, that's not exactly the most healthy for democracy. Now let's go down to Pete Buttigieg, who also has here a favorable rating, +3 here, 34 to 31, with 35% of Americans not having an opinion or maybe not knowing who he is. Now, when it comes to male voters, he's underwater, but female voters, he does a little bit better. When it comes to white voters, he's very, very close as well, and has a good favorable rating amongst Black and Hispanic voters. But a lot of voters still do not even know who Pete Buttigieg is, which kind of surprises me because he's been somebody the administration has been putting up a lot over the last or the Biden administration had been putting up a lot over the last 4 years. Now, if you look at moderate to moderate here, moderate voters, you see 27 to 33. So it's a little bit closer, but 40% of moderate voters do not even know who he is. The only people who seem to be really informed when it comes to Pete Buttigieg are Democratic voters and liberal voters and Harris voters, which is not a surprise. When it comes to party ID, you see that Pete Buttigieg is down, but you see 45% of moderates or independents, excuse me, don't even know who he is. And then once you force those independents to pick, do they lean Democratic or Republican, the ones who are just pure independents, which probably means they don't even know what the White House is, that number goes up to 58%. Now, I wanted to just make this video to show that the establishment saying that Bernie Sanders can't win, is not popular and all that, it's a myth. And almost every single piece of data dating back to 2015 until now, 10 years later, has always shown that Bernie Sanders is in many cases the most popular, as well as the candidate has most likely of a chance to beat Republican candidates. The data is always there to show that Bernie Sanders can do this job. Now, a lot of people are talking about his age and all that. Fine, I get that. That makes sense. But if we're looking at AOC and other people who kind of fall into this category, the data there is just that, you know, these ideas can win and Bernie can win. Now with AOC, you do have some other things happening there with both race and gender that could hurt her, unfortunately, in the country that we live in. But the whole idea that Bernie Sanders can't win, that's a myth. And there's just no data to back that up. So we're going to go over the YouGov poll later tomorrow, just go over some numbers, talk about Elon Musk and all that. But I just wanted to point out this Bernie thing because, again, it just dispels every myth that the establishment has for Bernie. So I will see you all later. Have a good one wherever it is you are, and bye-bye.